Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to Coaches Connect. I think our guest of honor is here somewhere. There she is.
Hi, how's it going?
Hey, good to see you. Brittany, you weren't like one of the first people in the waiting room, so there's that 30 seconds when you get nervous. You're like, I'm sure she'll be here.
Oh,
Brittany's like one of the most punctual people I know, so this is like my brain, right? My brain talking. So welcome everyone. Thank you so much, Brittany, for being here, for being my co-host today. We'll have people trickling in, but we wanted to talk about something kind of a hot topic today. I think we're going to talk about free coaching. We're going to talk about giving coaching away for free, and Brittany and I both have done that in various formats. So I think we'll talk a little bit about what works, what doesn't work, what can work, what probably is not going to work, like best practices. As we do that, I'll ask Brittany first to kind of introduce herself and maybe tell us a little bit about the kind of clients that she's working with and what she helps them do. Meanwhile, feel free to use the chat to pop in and let us know if you've ever given coaching away for free and how that went for you, like whether that went well, didn't go well, what would you have done differently, if anything. So Brittany, take it away. Tell us about yourself. Elevator pitch, go.
oh my gosh, I'm so not good at the elevator pitch. So I'm Brittany. I live in Northern California. I have two young boys. They're 3.5 and almost 7. I've been coaching since 2018, and last year I did PN2. I finished in April, and then I took the NBHWC board exam in November and passed. So very excited about that. It was a year of very hard work, and really glad to be kind of starting this new year with that behind me. The kind of clients I typically work with, I would say moms are attracted to me just because of how I show up on social media, which is where I get most of my clients. So I work with a lot of moms with young kids and a lot of all or nothing thinkers, a lot of women who don't want to count calories. So I teach the hand portion method that PN teaches, kind of made it my own over the years. And that's kind of what I do.
Awesome, thank you. Congrats on
How
that,
was that?
that exam. There's always that like pause when you do the exam, and then like, how long did you have to wait? It's like 3 weeks or something like that.
You know what they say, 6 to 8 weeks. And so I was so overwhelmed by that. And it's 6 to 8 weeks from the end of the testing window. And I took mine in the middle of the testing window. So the end of the testing window was November 30th, but I found out on December 22nd. So it was about like a 3-week wait from the end, but they tell you 6 to 8 weeks. So I wasn't expecting to find out till January.
Cool. Well, congrats. That's amazing. Well, I reached out to you and I actually suggested we do this particular session after you posted a tip in the PN coaches community that I think went really well with just engagement and people getting very curious. Can you remind us what that tip was? You were talking about like if you consider
Yeah.
yourself a
So
coach.
I felt inspired to share after getting off of one of the free calls and just how well it went and how great it felt to offer the support for free, but also the fact that she was not the first person who ended the call asking me about my services when there was nothing in having this call where I was going to be selling. I didn't plan to pitch to her at the end, like at all. It was literally what I did was I think it was actually the week of Thanksgiving and Black Friday, and I had decided not to launch anything for Black Friday. I just finished the exam stuff and I was like kind of needing some space, and I decided not to launch anything. And so the opposite of that for me was like, hey, let me just give something away for free. So I put in my Friday weekly email that I send out, I put like, hey, I have 10 spots open for free coaching calls, no strings attached. All I ask is that you take it seriously. I can even look back and maybe I think I put in the actual thread on the Facebook post, I think I put a screenshot of how I had stated it actually. But I put something to the effect of like, please just, take it seriously and be someone who I haven't spoken with before. Because, and I made a joke even like some people don't show up on free things kind of thing. And it went so well with, like I said, a lot of the women that I ended up talking to asked about my services at the end of it, that I was like, hey, this would be really helpful for other coaches to hear about, like offering, it's a great time of year, you know, like that holiday time to ask about, or to offer like as a gift, right? To like put it as like, this is a gift to you. So that's what I ended up doing.
Awesome. Well, feel free to pop in any questions if you guys have them as we talk about this. But right off the bat, what I want to point out a couple of things about how Brittany went about it. Right. So this is not kind of free coaching that she just posted on the internets. This was a very specific offer for a very specific limited thing to her mailing list, which means people who knew her already, liked her, admired her, wanted to hear from her. And also that specification of somebody who hasn't talked to her before. That I learned the hard way, to add that particular caveat. So somebody who hasn't spoken to me before. Tiffany is wondering, I'm just curious if these calls led to any new clients. Brittany.
No, they didn't. They didn't end up leading to any new clients. I didn't follow up, which is, I think, an important thing. I was really burnt out at the end of the year. And so one of the people actually commented on something I posted yesterday, and I can tell she's still having a hard time, so I might loop back to her. But truly, I don't think she's ready to invest. It's too, it sounds too stressful to her financially right now. And from experience, I know that's not a great fit if they're just not ready to do that. So, but no, short answer, no.
Yes.
Exactly. Because they don't sign up now doesn't mean they won't later. I think it's, you put that little kind of whisper in their ear of like, here's what I do offer, and then they can start saving for it, or, you know, get their spouse more on board, or whatever the issue is.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly the point, right? Like, and Brittany, like on one hand, we can ask, like, well, why do you think it was worth it if you didn't get any clients out of it? But I think you were very specific about that in your original post, where you were saying, like, every single one turned into people asking. People asking equals people indicating interest. That's what that means, right? Like, this is literally people saying, I'm interested, when they say, tell me more. And then say, oh, whoa, that's too much, or I can't afford it right now. Now is not a good time. We're doing a renovation. Like, all of that is secondary because they have expressed interest. And it just means maybe not right now. Might mean later. Like, I've had a client that started working with me 6 months ago. The first time we talked about working together was 2 years ago. Right. And this, like, so like that, the following up that Brittany mentioned would be key, because it's like, okay, well, you've expressed interest. What about now? What about now? What about now? And eventually it's like, actually, now is the good time. Right. And one of the biggest advantages that I always think coaches can have in our industry is longevity, just because it is an industry with such high turnover. And sometimes I joke where I say, like, hey, like, if somebody says, I'm not ready to work with you right now, I say, well, I'm not going anywhere. Like, you're not going to find me in real estate 2 years from now, right? Like, and if you go and look at my Facebook, I've been posting about coaching 12 years ago, and hopefully I'll be posting about coaching and coaches 12 years from now, right? So it's sort of like, we will be here. Brittany has been coaching for years and has seen those clients and leads go from warm to warmer. Mm-hmm. As they have had an opportunity to interact with her one-on-one. Like, that's an incredibly exclusive opportunity.
Yeah.
Would you add anything to that? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say too, like, the mindset shift from a year, the first year or two that I was coaching, where I felt like there was this urgency to get somebody to sign up, versus now, like you said, to be able to say, oh, take your time, I'm not going anywhere, right? Like that's growth too. And I think there is scarcity when we haven't coached for a very long time yet, to feel like, well, wait, they need to sign up right now. And like I said, but I kind of touched on this already, like, I'm much more aware of, well, it's not in either of our best interests if they're not 100% on board. So I'm not in the business of forcing anybody to be ready for coaching. Like, I love working with people who are ready without being pressured.
Yes, absolutely. And one of the biggest things that I think we can do is to earn trust,
Mhm.
right? In clients is having clients who believe that it is going to be a hell yeah, right? Like I say that I like to really approach coaching as a hell yeah relationship on both fronts. It has to be a strong hell yes from both parties. And I have said to prospective clients, I don't think it's the right time for you, right?
Mhm.
Or I don't think I'm the right coach for you. Um, or I've said, I'm not sure about this, convince me, right? Like I've said that too. So, and having that trust, like having people who feel that this is not going to be like an automatic shoe in, also allows people to kind of believe us as their coach. I know for me, the hugest compliment that I can possibly have is when a client is at the end of a coaching contract together and we're starting to talk about whether or not to continue working together. And they say, well, what do you think?
Mm.
Right? Like it's the sweetest thing ever because I am the like invested party by definition, right? Like I have conflict of interest because of course I want to continue working with them, but they also know that truly that I won't suggest that we keep working together just for the sake of working together, that I need to see that as a continued beneficial relationship. Okay, so Michael is asking, taking a step back, how do you get people's email in the first place? And social media posts? Brittany, how do people get on your email list? People who are already there, how do they get on there?
Yeah, so I don't do as great of a job as you, but ahead of my weekly emails, I'll typically say, like, here's what I'm talking about this week. If this interests you, sign up. I also have a freebie. So it's like, I call it my, I think it's called the Secrets to Effortless Eating, but it basically just talks through the 3 pillars that I kind of came up with to guide clients through this, like, kind of more effortless approach to nutrition. And so I have that as a freebie to get on my email list, and I'll talk about that occasionally.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that will be so starting an email list, right? Like it is that like taking a step back, like how do we get an email list? It's there was a time probably like 20 years ago where people would literally take their entire list of contacts and just start sending them newsletters. Like that was totally a thing and it was not illegal. And since then, things have changed, thankfully, but also made it kind of harder because we can't do that anymore. However, when I talk to coaches, I do remind them that the easiest way to kick that off is really that initial post, wherever it is. Like you could very much send an email to your entire list to just say, hey, everyone, friends and family, love you very much, Kate here. I'm actually starting a newsletter about healthy living and nutrition tips for busy moms. So if you would like to receive it, it's going to be once a week or maybe once a month, and I'm going to share recipes and maybe my workouts. If you would like to receive it, just hit reply and let me know. So however many people you send this to, it could be 10, it could be 100. Chances are if you pull up your contacts in your phone, right, like how many people emails do you have? Whoever replies, this is your seed email list. You now have an email list of 5 people or 15 or 25, right? Like, and then from then on, once you have that list, you now have a newsletter. Congratulations. And this is kind of what Brittany also was referring to. Then it just becomes the regular pinging of reminding folks that you actually do have an email list. Having a freebie is a very common form of building the list where there is like that sort of resource that is interesting and valuable. So if I maybe go to like Ashley's website and I see that Ashley has a freebie right there to download that says 10 smoothies that your toddler will drink, I'm downloading that. And then I am now on Ashley's email list, right? So that'd be kind of a common way of building a list. Okay, let me pop in. Okay, any questions so far just about what we've talked about? Any experiences? Sarah says, I found it harder to sell my free coaching than my paid coaching. Yeah. Sarah, can you say more about that? What do you mean?
I found
Yeah,
some
sure. So I have a Facebook group, and I have the offer of, and this is one of the things I was thinking of, is it's a continuous offer, so it wasn't time, there wasn't a time limit to that, so maybe that's part of it. But people who are in my Facebook group can basically book a mini coaching session with me whenever they'd like to. And I sort of remind people about that every week. But I've literally never had anyone sign up for free coaching, but I've gotten paid clients in the meantime, but still never managed to do that. And I sort of did something similar to what Brittany did and offered people the free coaching. And it was an hour session, whereas normally the mini coaching sessions are half an hour. And it was an hour, and I think one person put up their hand. That's more difficult than when I'm selling my paid coaching, but maybe because I approach it differently, and then also the time-based thing. And I think, like Brittany was saying, when you say something like you want the other person to be serious about it, I think people look at it a bit differently, because some people think, oh, is she going to sell me something at the end of this free thing? Whereas actually when you have some sort of condition on their part, they sort of they approach it differently, I think, as well.
Sarah, can I ask you a question? When you're thinking of like signing up for a free coaching call with someone, have you ever done that yourself?
Yeah, I have, which you actually, one of them was on the platform. But usually I would, if it was in a different situation, I often have the thought that I would only do that if I actually was serious about coaching with this person, because I feel like I need to do something in return, or that they're gonna expect something of me.
Actually, if you go looking, you can probably find a coaching call that Sarah and I did. So Sarah very kindly agreed to do a coaching call with me a number of months ago. Sarah, what made you sign up for that coaching call with me? Like, what made that okay?
I think because I knew it was like benefiting the community. So I knew it was what the exchange was. I was very clear on that. Whereas if it's just a free coaching session, I'm not really sure what they're going to then expect from me.
Right. And the initial post, just for context, I actually posted, I don't remember where it would have been, but the explicit offer was, I will coach you for free. Like, it was one coaching call. It was a very specific timeline, right? Like, so I will do one free coaching call in exchange for your permission to record it and to share that coaching call with the PM community. So, because I find it actually very hard to find demo coaching calls. I don't know if anyone has gone looking. I have. That's not really a thing that exists. So it's very hard to know what happens inside the coaching calls. So that's what I really wanted to be able to provide. So you notice what Sarah is saying here, that the fact that the exchange was very clear. It was clear what she was getting out of it, but it also was clear what the other person was getting out of it. In this particular case, me, because I was going to coach her for free. And that actually is a great point to consider if you yourself are offering free coaching. That's one of the things that people will ask, like themselves, probably not out loud, but they will ask that themselves. Like, why is this person offering free coaching? What's in it for them? And they will either, you're going to have to be very, very clear about what's in it for you, or they will assume, probably rightly so in most cases, that you are going to sell them something. Brittany, how did you go about making it very clear for people what was in it for you?
I definitely was very, like, I talked about it being like, I have a lot of time since I just finished this big accomplishment. And that was a way for me to share too with my list that I was doing that, because I wanted to let them know how hard I had worked on that. But I talked more about how it just was a gift. Like, I love coaching. I want to connect with you. Like, this is something that will be really fun for me. And I happen to have a lot of time on my calendar because I used to be spending so much time cramming for this exam. Like,
Yeah.
so yeah, I think you're spot on there for sure. And I have another thought too, related to being sold to on a call, but
Let me just highlight kind of what you said, and I'll go back to you right there. So did you hear what was in it for Brittany, right? Like what was in it? Brittany was actually indirectly letting her list know how hard she has worked on the certification. The fact that she just got the certification accreditation, what are we calling it, Brittany? It's not a certification, it's a board certification.
board certification, yeah.
Certification, right? So that's actually one of the things. It's like, hey, I just finished working really hard on this thing. Humble brag, totally deserved, right? Like, absolutely. So now the list knows, and I have some free time, and I want it to be a gift, right? Like, so I want it to be a gift as kind of a celebration of my hard work on this thing. And I actually think, did you do this sort of around holidays, Brittany, as well?
Yeah, I was saying I did it right. It was Black Friday. So it was right in like the availability was like after Thanksgiving, like right in that early December part.
And I think that also can give context because we can wrap it around like, hey, like I want to give back. I think Jenny and I had an exchange about that at some point, right? Like, how can I give my community back and wrap it around Thanksgiving, wrap it around Christmas. So around Christmas week, I did something similar, just not coaching related at all. I said, I have some free time. I kind of feel like signing some cards, and I will send a free copy of my book to like anyone who like raised their hand, right? I had X number of copies and send them out, and it cost me like $100, and that was my Christmas holiday giving, right? Like, so we can frame it as that, and that makes it very clear. It's a gift. I have some free time, and I'm celebrating this thing. Like there was no, and actually, Brittany also said no strings attached. Like actually said the words, right? Like that.
Yes,
I think
that felt important too, is to say like literally like it was my way of saying I will not be selling to you, right? Like,
yeah. And we can even say that. Like we can just say, I will not sell you anything. Explicitly, right? Like just to kind of take people's mind off things. I think it becomes a little bit harder when the free coaching opportunity is offered on an ongoing basis always, because then there is no like limit to it, and then it becomes a default opportunity to sell, right? Like, so I don't really do like one-off calls as a thing. But if someone is interested in working with me one-on-one, we will do a discovery call. You can call it a sales call. It's a 30 to 45 minute coaching call, which I would never charge for because it's a fit conversation. I think, Brittany, you do those as well. But there is always an implication and assumption that those conversations are around, let's talk about whether we're a good fit to work together. Right? Like, and yes, it is free time of mine. And yes, you get a taste of what someone's coaching is like in that moment. I think those are very important. When someone is looking for a coach of their own, this is what I usually recommend is make those discovery calls, meet and greet calls with 3 to 4 candidates and meet your potential coaches. And usually one will be an obvious choice. And usually one will be an obvious not choice as well. And then the other 2 might be in between. Brittany, back to you.
Yeah, no, this conversation kind of brought up in I think it was December, I had a call with somebody local, a mom who is a life coach and has some sort of leadership background. And she was offering free calls in my local mom Facebook group, and I took her up on it because it was a free call and I thought she sounded like someone who's knowledgeable. And at the time I was looking, I kind of backed off of this idea, but I was looking into possibly working for a company as a health coach instead of having my own business. I think I was experiencing a little bit of burnout. Now I'm feeling a little better about it. But I had wanted to talk to her because I had questions about building my resume. She mentioned being an expert on LinkedIn, and I just thought it would be a really good conversation. However, at the end of the call, she did try to sell to me. And I had this kind of like yuck feeling. And I think there's something that she missed, which is like, well, on the one hand, I think it says something about your own just values in terms of sales, right? But also, like, I think she could have done a better job at framing this call, because I truly thought this was just a free call. Like, where at some point she might ask for a referral, or like maybe she might follow up and check on you afterwards and then do it from there. But I was surprised that this was her strategy, and it felt a little bit like it lacked transparency. And so I do think we need to do a really good job with like being clear about the intention.
Yeah, and I think also for folks that are just not familiar, like everyone here is probably in coaching industry in some capacity, right? So like I know that if I'm booking a discovery call with someone, I'm expecting for them to pitch me something at the end. Like that is my expectation. And if somebody is not in the industry, they actually can be very thrown off by that at the end. We're like, whoa, I wasn't expecting to be sold anything, right? So I think that, Brittany, it always takes two, right? It takes two parties. Are we being transparent? And sometimes the party can just be completely unaware and unprepared as well. There are a couple of questions that are in the chat. So Erica is asking, what info do you include or go over in your free coaching calls?
That's a great question. So I had them fill out a form ahead. Over the summer, I had to document 50 coaching sessions for part of the requirement to apply to sit for the board exam. And I created a one-off offer called a clarity call. And I created which was paid because that was what I was doing at the time. But I created like a short questionnaire for that clarity call. So I used the same questionnaire that I had them fill out ahead of time. And so in terms of what I go over or the information that I included, it was very much based on their responses. And I think one of the questions, and I can find the link and tag it here, but I actually think it's in the Facebook link thread that you shared, actually. I'm pretty sure I put it in there, Kate.
I think Jenny just already did the sleuthing and shared your clarity form with us.
Oh, very cool. So yeah, so I asked, and I think there's a question in there. It's something to the effect of like, what is the area you want to talk about most? Or I asked like, what do you want to get out of this call, basically? So we talked about what they specifically wanted to cover. But we also kind of started out in the way that PN2 kind of teaches you, which is to build the agenda. So not just like showing up to the call with assumptions, but kind of like, hey, how are you feeling today? What feels really important to you? And then like at the end of this call, what will feel like it was successful? Like what kind of, so I called it like clarity, right? Like what kind of clarity are you looking for?
Brittany's sound is breaking up for me a little bit. Is it just me? Is it just me? Yeah. Okay. It's not just me. This is like a horrible way to ask a question because it doesn't matter if people are nodding or shaking their head. I have no idea what they're actually saying. Can you guys hear Brittany well? Okay.
I'm not having any issues.
Beautiful. So it might be just on my end with rural internet. Did we just hear a little meta lesson? Can we just pause there on asking good questions? My gosh, right? Like, so what was the actual question that I should have asked? Can you hear Brittany well? And then you can answer clearly yes or no. Am I the only one having that problem? Yes, no, I don't know what this means. This information is useless to me now. Amazing. Okay, so couple of other questions that I saw popping in. Okay, I actually want to clarify something as we're talking about this notion of free coaching call. I really want to distinguish the two types of free coaching calls that Brittany and I are kind of talking about, because I want to make sure that they don't come across as interchangeable. There is this idea of a free initial coaching call, discovery call, sales call. Let's see if we're a fit. They're pretty standard, right? Like that's kind of like, let's book that initial meet and greet. Like those are free coaching calls. What Brittany, like what we kicked off really talking about is something very different, is actually offering people a one-off coaching call where we're not talking about whether or not we're a fit. We literally are running it as a one-off coaching call. So this is something that I asked for, and Sarah volunteered, as I said earlier, right? Like at no point I was going to pitch Sarah any services or anything. Like it was literally like, we're here, we're going to troubleshoot this one thing in this one-off setting, right? So like when Brittany initially talked about offering this opportunity to her mailing list, it wasn't everybody get on a discovery call with me, but rather like, no, truly, it's a one-off opportunity to troubleshoot, to problem solve. So I wanted to make sure we were kind of clear on that. I've done something similar too when I send an email to my mailing list and I said like, hey, again, no strings attached, 30-minute coaching call. I actually, I think, specified, like, especially for somebody who has never worked with a coach before, right? Like that's something that's interesting because it's a completely like no stakes time investment where you can actually try out what is this coach thing. And that was very interesting because some of the people who took me up on that offer, they have like, they're just not in the coaching industry. They've never worked with a coach. They don't know what is this coach thing. And actually a couple of them have later on became clients because that was very fascinating, a great experience for them where they walked away. There was no pitch at the end. It was no strings attached. But then I heard from them a few days later saying, what was that? I want more of that. Whatever we did, is that coaching? Can we talk more about that? For folks who raised their hands in that way, I went ahead and I scheduled a separate discovery call. And we then talked about the possibility of working together and if we were a fit. But the way I ran those sessions, you heard Brittany had a form where she was asking people before the call, what do you want to talk about? And I essentially found that out just literally on the spot where I got on a call, on the free call with whoever booked it. And in the first 2 minutes, we said, hey, great, nice to see you. I never met a lot of those people before. Nice to see your face. And I would say, how do you want to spend our time together? We can either just hang out and touch base and like get to know each other, or we can troubleshoot a specific problem, right? Like notice how easy of a choice it is too, right? Like it's this or this. Which one do you want to do? Some people said, let's just chat. Great. And some people said, well, actually, I was hoping you can help me with this one thing, right? And then the one thing came up and then we did that for 30 minutes. Right? So that's sort of how I approach that. Okay. Anything else coming up? Any questions? I'm just scrolling through comments here. Or Brittany, let me know if you want to pop in here. Actually, Michelle's asking a question. You touched on something I think is important. What are ways to call these coaching sessions that are one-offs or two-offs that the public will understand? Brittany, can you weigh in here? And Michelle, meanwhile, can you maybe specify, are you referring to the discovery calls or are you referring to the one-off coaching opportunity calls?
Yeah, I take it as like the one-off calls where it's like like you're trying to actually coach someone and not talk about if it's a fit to work together. You're welcome to steal clarity call. I think ChatGPT would be great for that, kind of ideas for what to call it. Yeah, in a way, I don't think it necessarily matters as long as you're describing what's going to happen clearly.
Yeah, and I think in many ways there is no magical word that we're going to use that will automatically make it clear to everybody, right? Like, so I work primarily with coaches, so in many ways I have to explain things less, right? Like that's kind of that benefit. If you're working with general public, right, or moms, right, like you might need to be very explicit in terms of what things mean. Also keep in mind that some people's brains just work differently. So one of the things that can be very helpful is to get very, very specific, like in terms of what happens when. here's what will happen after you will book this call with me. I will ask you to fill out a form. You will get a confirmation email. Then we will get on a Zoom call. The Zoom call will last 30 to 45 minutes. I ask that you somewhere in a quiet place. Do you notice how much detail I'm including? Right? Like, so personally, me as an individual, I don't need that level of detail because I'm sort of good to like hop on and rock and roll. But for a lot of the people I work with, and especially folks that are neurodivergent, for example, or more introverted, or who like to have a little bit more time to think, that can be an incredibly valuable addition, right? Like, here's exactly what will happen if you book a call, if you submit an application, if we get on Zoom call with me, because people could be worried, like, what does that mean? Like, is it going to be on the phone or is it going to be on Zoom? Like, will you see me or will you only hear my voice? Someone was asking if the phone or Zoom works better. Brittany, I know you do Zoom. How did you decide on Zoom versus phone?
Oh, I'm such a body language person, so I like to see faces and see facial expressions while somebody's talking. I think it helps to feel just more connected. That way, while you're talking, like what they're thinking. So I always, even I was using Zoom before Zoom was cool, right? Like, I just think it's nice to be face to face.
Yeah, so I think it really depends just kind of on what you're comfortable with and what your audience is comfortable with. So, just what Brittany was saying, like, I really like body language. I want to see the people I'm with, and I feel like that's a better connection. If you want to be just more accommodating, you can also have the prospective client or person pick, right? Like, so if you prefer a phone call or a Zoom, let me know. Right? Like, that can be something that you offer as an option if you're comfortable with that.
Yeah, I was going to say too, part of what I even do now for discovery calls is in the confirmation message they get after they schedule it, there's specific directions to be in a quiet place with a good internet connection, because I got really sick of people showing up from their cars. And I get that they, especially the moms I'm chatting with, are like, go, go, go. But if they can't find the time to have a discovery call in a quiet place, they're not going to find the time to have a coaching call in a quiet place. And so that just felt like an important way to start off the relationship.
Yeah. So just even having like a little bit of context as to what we can expect, right? Like, how much time do you need, being in a quiet place where you're by yourself. And often these conversations can touch on pretty sensitive topics, right? So it's not super helpful or constructive to be in a living room where people are kind of like walking back and forth, right? Or there have been instances where people showed up on a call, like literally from a kitchen with like their husband and kids, and it's like, we're gonna need to reschedule this because I'm just not gonna get the information that I need out of this in order for us to proceed. So Erica is asking about mailing lists. Does anyone use the email newsletter to link to their wellness blog or website? Instead of writing the content in the email, just have an introduction in the email and then a link to the newsletter content on my website. So I'll let anyone here please weigh in. And Brittany, I'm curious. I think what you do here, but Erica, maybe you can clarify why this way. And do you want to maybe unmute? So it's, yeah.
I was just curious about that because I have a website and I do, I've been more into maintaining it and doing more articles more often. And then I was just wondering if, rather than linking to the website, do some people prefer to just read it in the email or, just to get the interest over onto the website, if that makes sense?
So I'm gonna push a little bit. In order to what though? So why do we want to get them to the website?
Well, just because I've already written it there, rather than, have to find like an email newsletter type of program or something that sends it out, like MailChimp is one. I've not specifically looked into newsletters, but I've always done content on my blog.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so I guess what I'm hearing you ask is like, I'm already doing content in this way, right?
Yes.
So I don't want to necessarily like take this content and put it somewhere else because I'm already creating it here.
Right, right.
So what I will point out though, you will still have to do it if you're sending an email, right? Like, so even if you were to say, hey friends, here's the link to my most recent blog, here's the link, you're still going to have to do that somewhere.
Right, right. Yeah,
Right.
I guess I was just curious if, people who do newsletters and maybe keep a blog, do they do two separate things where they're, a newsletter is maybe more personal and, the blog posts maybe are more in general kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Brittany, how do you do that? Do you have content like on your website published?
You know what? I actually want to learn more SEO stuff and maybe do that. However, my first instinct to the question was you're just asking them to do an extra step if you were linking to something, and I would put all of your gold into the actual email. You can do two things. You can repurpose the content, so you can just put it in two places. That's not a problem. You can make them slightly different where, like you said, one's more personal in the email and maybe one's a little bit more general or kind of detailed on the blog. But I wouldn't, if you're trying to figure out how to make them work with each other, I wouldn't link to something because from my experience, people don't like to click in emails. It's just that extra step. And if they're already reading the email, then they'll keep reading the whole thing if it's engaging.
Yeah, and I think what I'll add to that is, Erica, there's been a shift in how people consume information in the last 5 to 10 to 15 years. So like I say that as somebody who started blogging for the first time probably in 2002, right? So it's been a very long time. And I also have a website that has 600 plus long form articles. So I'm very much like a blogger first before anything else. And as I even look at how my newsletter has evolved, it actually went from, hey friends, how are you doing? Great day today, great weather outside. By the way, here's my recent blog post link, to now being, it's called letters to friends, right? Like, and you get a letter. What used to be my blog post is now a letter that you receive in your inbox. And this is primarily because people have shifted in terms of how they consume information. And if we're going to consume long form content, I don't want to go anywhere else, right? And also, I really think, and I think many people think that way, and I encourage you to think that way, your email list is the closest inner circle that you're going to get. These are the people who have raised their hand and said, I want to hear from you, Erica. Like, I want to get updates from you. So if you're on my email list, you're going to get all the things, full form, full version, first invites, first heads up, right? Like, so that's what you will get. I will then take some of the newsletters, in fact, most of them, and I will publish them on my website. So they're there, and I will sometimes rewrite them slightly so they read like essays and not a newsletter, right? Like, so for example, if there's a call to action, like, hey, like this week, my one-on-one applications are open, like that's irrelevant on my website. I would take that out. So it just reads as a blog post. So there is still like, they still live in two places. And that way, if someone says, hey, do you have any suggestions on eating slowly? I don't have to go digging through my emails. I can actually just go to my website and send them a link to that blog post that I wrote. Does that help? Yeah.
Yes, that's very helpful. Thank you. And I've been blogging for a very long time, not specifically for nutrition coaching, but so it's something that I'm starting to incorporate with my nutrition. But the newsletter stuff is new to me, but I understand that, the way people consume blogs now has changed a bit.
And I mean, there's definitely like seems to be a bounce back because Substacks are so popular
Right.
now, right? Like, which is essentially just that. So notice also like when we ask a question, do some people do it this way? I can guarantee you that some people are doing it that way. Right? Like absolutely some people, like I'm still subscribed to some, like I've been getting his newsletters probably for 12 years and he blogs very occasionally. So what I get is literally a little notification that says, hi, blah, blah, blah. I've written a new essay about blah, blah, blah. Here's the link. That's all that is, right? And then I click and I read, right? Because I want to. So you can absolutely do it that way because there are some people doing it some way.
Right.
But I
Okay,
think
great.
the shift where we get stuck is when we ask, do some people do it this way? What we're really asking is, should I do it this way?
Yeah.
Like that's really what we're asking, right? And there is really a good way to connect the two because I was like, Erica, some people are doing it this way, some people are doing it that way, right? So we can provide perspectives, but then bring it kind of back to you and say, well, hey, given some of the things that we brought up here, what do you think is the best fit here for you? Given that if you want to do newsletter, you're still going to have to figure out some sort of email clients. You're already doing that work, right? And if you want to start building that newsletter list and that closeness,
Yeah.
then maybe you want to give them the good stuff in the email.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Ashley is asking, can making a Facebook group have a similar function as a newsletter? Brittany, what do you think? You have your newsletter, people are expecting it every Friday morning, like clockwork.
Well, Facebook groups, you have to get people to add to the group, right? A lot of people don't like Facebook these days. A lot of people are trying to stay off social media more. I would say that it's more steps because everyone's email inbox is right there. And so I'm not sure how they're like they're the same actually. Like I think they're just two very different platforms. A newsletter goes straight to their inbox. You're talking to one specific person because you can talk in kind of like that, like you, right? And talk directly to somebody in a newsletter, whereas in a group, you're talking to a group of people. So I think they're not necessarily that comparable.
Ashley, do you want to hop on just on mic? And when you say like, can making a Facebook group have a similar function? What function are you referring to here?
Yeah, so to answer that question, I was thinking, okay, instead of sending something to the inbox, maybe posting something on Facebook on a regular basis. But now that I'm saying it out loud, I'm like, well, I guess I should be posting on social media anyways. So the points that Brittany made are good. That makes sense.
Well, there are
You
completely
already-
different things on one hand, right? Like because what Brittany was saying, like they're kind of apples and oranges, but also apples and oranges are both fruit. So we can always make a comparison. So if we're asking, can I regularly share information somewhere with people where they will see it? Yeah, of course you can use a Facebook group for that.
Mhm. Yeah. Thank you guys.
Brittany, go ahead. Sorry, you were saying something.
No, I was going to say, if you already have a Facebook group, you can definitely use that Facebook group to share similar content, right? But you'd think that anybody in a Facebook group would want to be on an email list anyway. So why not just be able to have like that more personal place?
Yeah, I think most people like, well, I shouldn't say most people. What people would often have is they would have both because they do serve different purposes. But also to Brittany's earlier point, you have to consider who the audience is and how old you are. So I'm 40. So if I'm thinking of people that are my age or older, Facebook will probably still be a pretty good choice. If I was even 5 years younger, it already makes less sense. And Instagram probably makes more sense.
Yeah.
If you are 20, I have no idea what makes sense. Maybe it's TikTok, maybe it's some other platform I haven't heard of because I'm too old, right? Like, so it also just depends, like, where are your people?
Yeah, that's a good point. And the I guess the other thing I thought of with the newsletter is there have been plenty of times where I literally have tens of thousands of emails I haven't read.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know that's terrible, but I know other other people that some of these people are my target audience that would be in the same situation. And so I think of putting all this effort into a newsletter and thinking, are they going to read it? Like, I don't even like reading the emails from my parents, for my children's teachers. I'm like, it feels like too much. I'm so sick of all my emails. Like, so that, I guess, just the so much being sent to my email is just overwhelming. And that's one of the things that was coming up for me.
I think that is a very common concern. One thing that I remind folks is that you are not your clients, right? Like, you are actually not necessarily representative of your clients. Maybe in some ways you are. We often start with, like, I work with coaches, I'm a coach. Brittany works with moms, she's a mom. Like, so there's obviously that common ground there. But on the other hand, if you were like, I usually use the example of like personal trainers. The vast majority of personal trainers do not hire a personal trainer. You with me? Because they are a personal trainer who like working out. They dig working out. They like exercising. They don't need accountability. They don't need somebody to write programs for them. They don't need somebody to count their reps. That's why they became a personal trainer. But if they thought, well, I don't need a personal trainer, why would somebody hire a personal trainer? Their clients are not like them. Their clients need something different. So you're absolutely right. Some people might very much have 10,000 emails in their inbox. Some people might be inbox 0. But what other people have going on in their inboxes should not be a decision factor in terms of what you do or do not do. I don't care what's in other people's email boxes.
I would say too, like, to get into the head of your ideal client and think about, if you were them, what would you open? Like, what does seem really interesting to you if you can get inside the mind of somebody who has the struggles that you help problem solve, right? Like, what is that what would interest them? What would be like, oh my gosh, I have to open this email. I have to read this. This is so valuable to me, right? And so when I'm writing my Friday email, I usually use inspiration from current clients and things I've helped them problem solve. I might use an example from my own life where I think it's like a great teaching moment, because if they're in your inbox, they want to hear your personal stuff, right? They want to hear about my kid throwing a tantrum and how I got through that and still took care of myself. Like, that's interesting to them. So when you're coming up with the topic, like, it doesn't have to, like, I think you're imagining like a boring topic, if right? Like, and you're not going to open an email from somebody that they're writing boring kind of cookie cutter stuff. So just thinking outside of the box there.
Well, and the other thing is, Brittany, something that came to mind as you were speaking is that boring is completely and utterly subjective. Right? Like, so what does boring mean? Because I have seen people like talk about accounting with stars in their eyes. And it's the most beautiful thing to see, right? Like, I want to jump out of the window, but like, I love that for you, right? Like, and that's sort of the point. There is a comment that Tiffany, are you somewhere where you can unmute? Going once, going twice.
Oh, there you go. Sorry.
Oh, amazing. So Tiffany, hi. So Tiffany just said, I can relate to email overwhelm. However, there are certain people I look forward to seeing their email in my inbox. And Kate's is one of them. First of all, really, like, that is very kind. Not to toot my own horn, not why I brought you on camera, I swear. But I'm curious, why? Like, why is my email one of the ones you're looking forward to opening, even though there's so many emails and Old Navy wants you to buy their shorts?
Several reasons. First of all, I care what you have to say, because you usually, like you talked about boring being subjective. Yours are not boring to me. I feel like I learn a lot from, your post or your emails. And so those are the emails. Like, yeah, I probably have thousands of unread emails in my inbox as well. They're the from the teachers and from things I don't care about. But like Kate's email, I usually always open, and there's a couple of others, just like Karin Norden, like the Body Brain Alliance. Like, I open her emails, and so there's the Building the Elites. Like, those are the ones that like I always open, because they always have something interesting to say that I know that I'm going to get something out of. And if that particular email for that day doesn't really resonate with me, it's like, oh, well, but I'm always opening because I'm excited to read what they have to say because I feel it's applicable and helpful in my view. So I don't know. Does that answer your question?
That's super helpful. And the reason I wanted Tiffany to hear you speak about that a little bit is because I will have people unsubscribe from my newsletter every week or every month or whatever, right? And I mean, God forbid I sell something, like then absolutely. So, and as they should.
Yep.
So I think Erica was speaking about having blogged for a long time. When I initially started blogging, when I started the newsletter, it was primarily about endurance sports. It was about obstacle racing. It was about competing in obstacle racing and the politic of the sport. And I was one of the few people writing about it. So people signed up for my newsletter wanting to hear about that. Well, guess what I did 5-10 years later? I got married and I got a house and I got 2 cats and I got 2 kids. And I hurt my shoulder, right? So, and my topics have changed a lot. And some people don't want to hear about that anymore. And I wouldn't want to hear about that if I was them either. Right? That wouldn't be interesting to me. That would be pretty boring to me. And then I would probably unsubscribe. And consider your own experience unsubscribing. Like I have subscribed to people's things and all of a sudden 2 years later, like they really changed their tune and it's like, okay, I'm going to go now, right? Like this is no longer my vibe. That's great. It never feels great when people leave. But that's also the right thing to do for them and for me. And then, Tiffany, what you're saying, Kate's email is a highlight in my inbox that makes you the right subscriber for now, right? And if I start breeding frogs a year from now, and that is completely not your vibe, then you're going to unsubscribe, as you should.
Yeah.
Right? Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, so we have some names. Oh, love, all the love in the comments. Yeah, and Brittany, talk a little bit about the feedback that you get on newsletter, because I know your Friday newsletter is very beloved. And some of those folks, you know, like I know they've been getting the newsletter for a while. They've never bought anything. Maybe they never will.
No, I call them my super fans. So I have a really high open rate. It's around 60%, which is around 600 something people. I will say I lose more subscribers than I gain these days. So that is what it is. But I think what I do well is that the format's the same every week, so people know what to expect. So I tell some sort of story, I link it to some sort of wellness concept, and then I have a mindset tidbit, a habit shift, and an easy living tip related to that one topic. So it's very, I do that for my own brain so that I don't have such a hard time writing it from scratch every week. I kind of keep it in that similar format, but I do think the predictability of that, like they know when they open it, they're going to get very kind of helpful, supportive information that is relevant. I try to tell an interesting story. Sometimes it's only interesting to me, but yeah, I think that has something to do with it too.
Yeah, and I love that, Brittany. Yours has this like very specific structure and flow that allows you to plan also, like when you're writing it, you know, you have to write this, this, and this. And it also goes back to Erica's earlier question, do people do it this way, right? Because Brittany's emails go out, like I think you have a specific time. It's like 7 a.m. or something, right?
It's yeah, sometime Friday morning. I try to be random with the time, but yeah.
You try. It has to be an effort to be random. But yeah, it's always Friday morning and there is this structure. My email can come Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday. It's usually once a week and it's a complete and utter fucking wild card, if I'm completely honest, in terms of the topic, right? Like it's sort of something that struck. I've written about Himalayas and children and COVID and vomiting and grandchildren and grandparents and Russia and passports and like, and I bring it back to coaching and behavioral change. Like you can do it your way. It's kind of going back to which diet is the best diet. Well, you gotta like it because you're the one eating it. So in this case, you're going to be the one writing it. So you better enjoy it. And this is one of the things when you're thinking of a topic, like before committing to Happy Monday recipes, do consider if you want to commit to recipes
Mhm.
every Monday.
Actually, funny enough, I had 4 parts when I started this, so I'm very proud of the fact that I'm coming up on 2 years of a weekly email. But when I first started it, I had a movement part in there too. And I was literally filming something related, and I just got I was like, no, this can't keep going. This is not sustainable to do weekly. And it's funny, Kate, because one of my favorite things about your email is that I love to read to the end to figure out how you're going to connect it back to coaching. Like, it's one of my favorite things to see, because to me it's so brilliant. And I'm like, how is she going to do it today?
Blind kitten meandering through the woods, finally finding its way back. So Chris is asking, could you repeat the structure for your
Oh, sure.
newsletter?
Yeah, so it's I tell a story that I link to. It's like all or nothing thinking or something like that. And then it's I call it a mindset tidbit, a habit shift, and an easy living tip, because my email is called Easy Living Insights.
Yeah, Brittany, would you mind sharing your website? And I would actually say that the better way to do that is probably just subscribing to Brittany's newsletter to see what it's like. But Brittany will have to promise that she won't get offended if anyone
I won't.
unsubscribes
You
ever.
can totally unsubscribe after you see it. So that's the link to subscribe to the email list. And then it's just Brittany Alexa Burns for my website.
Amazing. And Tiffany's saying, I have a topic for each week. First week is mindset. Second week is nutrition. Third week is stress and sleep. Fourth week is exercise. And fifth is whatever I choose. And then I'm assuming like she cycles through that. So that's incredible, super structured, very meal preppy, right? Like, so kind of having that that way, and Brittany's website. Yeah. Okay. Any last minute questions? Anything that came up in terms of like free coaching, offering free coaching calls, or kind of got into newsletters at the end there? Thoughts, feelings, anecdotes, takeaways. Amazing. Okay. Well, it's that time, everyone. Brittany, thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I hope you had fun. So find Brittany, say hello, and you will see her in the PN Coaches community, and I will see you in the next Coaches Connect.